Hello and welcome to the Critical Breakdown, the podcast where we start at the bottom of Rotten Tomatoes and work our way to 100% fresh. I'm Max.
And I'm Scott, and today we're talking Blade Runner, rated 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Chosen by Max.
Chosen by me.
Ooh, I like that. That's like a seal, like a seal of approval.
I'll put a little bonk noise right there or something.
Ooh,
a stamp noise. I don't know.
Yeah, I like it. We could sell Blu-rays, one, because they're the ultimate audiovisual experience, and two, with the a Max choice, like the Critical Breakdown Select Blade Runner Final Cut.
The Criterion Breakdown Collection.
Yeah. It's
our own label under Criterion, where it's just movies we pick.
Yeah. Or sub-Criterion.
Yeah. They're like, stop pitching Joe Dirt.
Never. It is also worth noting that we'll be talking about the final cut today.
Yes.
There are pretty significant differences between the OG Blade Runner and Ridley Scott's final cut. Mm-hmm. Though I realized today, watching Blade Runner again, I don't actually think I've seen the original, so I can't really speak to the difference. I know there's narration in the original, but it's got to be more than just that. The
ending is different too, I believe. I think it was like a happier ending, where maybe in the theatrical cut there might have even been like a scene of them smiling and happy together afterwards, but I don't. It's been so long since I've seen the theatrical / video cut, whatever was the first one out that I saw. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean,
it's way different in that sense. Like the feel of it's different.
For sure.
This one, without the narration, it definitely makes you need to pay attention more to catch the subtleties. But
yeah, and it kind of puts the subtleties on display a little better.
Yeah, that's true.
But no, it's good. I think it's kind of rare these days to even find a movie on Amazon video rentals that has it's a separate cut on there too. Yeah. Even Kingdom of Heaven, I'm not sure has the final director's cut, which that's another movie where that's the story with it, is that's the version to watch. It's the perfect version. And
that old Ridley Scott.
Yeah, I actually forgot that was Ridley Scott. So, they say Zack Snyder's all about the director's cut. Ridley Scott did it first.
Yeah, did it first, people. Did it better.
Yeah, ooh.
Yeah, I'm coming for you, Snyder.
Saucy. Well, have you watched any Snyder works recently that make you nice and saucy like this?
Yeah, I finally watched Justice League.
Hey, there he is.
I watched a lot of movies, actually. I just did some international travel, so I was stuck in a metal tube in the sky, and I'm going to save some of these for next time because
stretch them.
I watched a ton.
So let's talk J League. What'd you think? What's the survey verdict?
Dude, they took the Justice League, which is one of my favorite superhero teams and most of my favorite DC characters, and made a movie that was hard to pay attention to.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you.
It is. First of all, the villain, I forgot his name halfway through the movie.
I honestly don't. Is it Steppenwolf?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's a non-entity.
They couldn't have made a less present villain if they tried.
It was mind-blowing to me. Pick the worst Marvel villain, and that villain has depth compared to this guy.
Yeah, and Marvel is pretty famous for
bad villains. Yeah,
no depth in their villains.
So I was just like, wow, he should have not been in the movie at all. Maybe have the threat of him. But yeah, so basically, if you guys haven't seen Justice League, it's a mess.
That's fine.
It's fine. It's not it's rarely visually appealing too. It's not much of it has a great look to it. There's moments where it looks cool, and there's moments that the music swells up and the scene works as a moment, but the story just doesn't matter. I found myself enjoying The Flash a lot.
Yeah, The Flash was my favorite part. What did you think of Aquaman?
I was fine with him. He was exactly what I expected, just to be a bro. I know he kind of got on your gears a little bit there.
He grated on my nerves.
Yeah, but
and then Cyborg was nothing.
Yeah, they could have done a lot more with that.
What a joke.
Yeah. So much of it was just kind of a joke. Wonder Woman was fine, but she didn't do anything special. So like her most interesting thing was being flirtatious with Batman.
Yeah, and like even most of that, like it didn't transcend what they even did in like the trailer.
Yeah. So it was just kind of like, okay. It wasn't as bad as like I thought it was going to be.
Well, that's good.
I would say I don't know. I'll probably never revisit this film, so I'll never really think about it. But yeah.
And like, so for you, Batman vs Superman is like head and shoulders above this one.
For some reason, yeah. It just had more of a visual appeal to it too. Like, it's not a beautiful movie, but I think it's better put together in the end, even though it's poorly put together. That one at least has like something that compelled me to keep watching it the 2 times I watched it. It's a mixture of, it's kind of fun, but not really. It's almost like it's like when you're watching a train wreck, but it's a fun train wreck. That's how I see that one. This one's more like
that classic fun train wreck scenario.
There's plenty of them out there. And you know, I like myself like a cheesy action movie. So I can justify that. I still have never revisited Suicide Squad. I was pretty neutrally positive on it, where it was like, it was just fine, but it wasn't terrible. I just never will watch that one again, I think.
That just as a reminder, that is an Oscar award-winning film.
Yeah, and hey, kudos to it.
Kudos for sure.
But no, so Justice League, I watched, and I immediately had to watch something better.
Yeah. So what'd you transition into?
I watched the third part of a superhero, not superhero, but an action series that features like a ensemble cast and the return of like beloved characters within this series.
Okay.
And it is Triple X: Return of Xander Cage.
Okay. I didn't know Triple X was a part 3. I thought it was the part 2.
So there's Triple X, and then they made a sequel without Vin Diesel, where his character apparently died, and he was the Triple X program, which is based on that character, Xander Cage. He was then replaced with Ice Cube as a new guy.
I can appreciate that.
And that's Triple X State of the Union.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I remember that one then.
And then I watched Return of Xander Cage. I won't go too deep into it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was amazing because I like the 2 Triple X movies. They're ridiculous. They're not meant to be like serious, and it knows it in this one, and it hits all the beats it needs to, while still somehow like being very representative and good at the same time. Like it was somehow very enjoyable. Vin Diesel's getting a bit too old for me to buy him as an action hero still, with like flirting with young women and stuff. So that was kind of funny to see him like come off as kind of that creepy guy at the bar.
I've never thought that Vin Diesel had that like top level charisma of a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson like Bruce Willis in Die Hard.
Yeah. No, I mean,
so
I agree.
I've always had trouble buying in on that.
But with the first movie, he was like an extreme sports athlete / asshole who becomes a secret agent, and that worked with his persona.
That works for him. Okay.
Yeah, but this one they tried to they tempered that a little bit, made him a little bit nicer, more friendly, more like his character from Fast, all that. But no, I actually enjoyed it. It was fun. That's all I have to say.
Did it get pretty good reviews?
I think they were basically like, if you like the series, you'll love this movie.
Okay.
I don't remember the score, but I remember people just being like, if you were in on 1 and 2, you'll be in on this one. And that's what I say. So
that's good, man. I don't think I'll go out of my way for it. You know?
Yeah.
It's about as far from the Scoot spectrum as it gets, I'd say.
Have you seen either of the other 2?
Shockingly, no. I missed those.
I was very resistant to watching it, and some friends made me watch the first one in theaters with them, and I thought it was phenomenally good and bad at the same time. And that's where that series stays for me, where it does everything you want it to, and that's what brings you in. Because you're like, that's stupid. Like he shouldn't be able to do that. It'd be cool if they made him do this, and then they do it, and you're like, okay, I can go with this. So
you just nod, and you're like, yeah, I see what's happening.
Yeah. It would almost be like using Albert's F-Yes system. So
sure, yeah.
It delivers on it.
It seems like a movie built to maximize fuck yes, you know.
Yeah, that's true. I got 2 more if you want me to.
I mean, you plow through them, my man. Yeah. What else you got?
Well, I'll save my favorite one that I watched for last. I watched Dunkirk.
Oh yeah.
Really enjoyed it. It was I watched it on my way back. So I just left
back from your international trip.
Yeah, my Euro trip. So it kind of felt appropriate because we had flown over the English Channel earlier that morning.
Yes. So just like the boys at the beaches of Dunkirk needed to leave.
Yeah. I was very tired. Like they were. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's really.
You got yourself into it.
It's really good.
It's a good movie.
I enjoyed the editing and the pacing and the fact that it's barely any dialogue in the movie.
It's like not very character driven, which is interesting.
Yeah,
for
it's like
Christopher Nolan
it's
movie.
moment driven, and that's cool. No, but I really digged it. I'll probably watch it again for sure eventually. Everything that needs to be said can easily be said about it. Like, it's Christopher Nolan, it's good, it's war, but it's a different take on war. It's very tense. It makes you kind of like the claustrophobic moments feel very claustrophobic.
Like when the ship is like crashing into the dock there and they're almost pinned, like that made me shrink into my seat.
And there's like 10 of those moments. So
everything with Tom Hardy too, like where he's tracking his fuel and I like how the music kind of adds the subtle like clock ticking, so like it always keeps that tension. I really liked it. Yeah.
The sound, I could see how that bothered people, the sound design of the film, because it's purposefully disorientating.
I liked it. The only problem I had would maybe be some of the mixing.
Yeah. The dialogue and music.
Some of the dialogue was not easy to understand with accents and the music going over it.
And especially if there was also like gunfire at the same time, you would just not understand anything that's going on. But I see it's Nolan, so I wonder how much of that's intentional. But
yeah, I mean, I imagine it's at least partially a creative choice.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine it would have been very easy to have a conversation,
Yeah, I agree.
During those events.
And then also the lack of dialogue really plays for a good moment later with a certain character. Because there's no dialogue for like 2/3 of the film, basically, if you add it up. Yeah. And so some characters can just stay quiet the whole time. And it's interesting how that all plays out.
For sure. Yeah, they do a really good job with the whole concept. I like the 3 timelines too. At first it was a little weird. Yeah. But then like at the end when it all comes together, it worked really well for me.
Once it clicks, like once you figure out the timeline thing that's going on, it's super easy to follow. But until you figure that out, you do get kind of like confused. But that goes back to the whole, it's disorientating.
Sure.
So.
What did you think of the boy band? Is it Zayn that was in it?
No, this was a different one. It wasn't Zayn.
I don't actually know their names. I remembered it when it came out, but
I don't remember his name. So let's just say that it's Thomas. Thomas was good.
Thomas too. Yeah,
he was good.
He did fine.
Yeah, I had all the young dudes in it. I like that it was like actual young soldiers, because so many times they put like 30-year-olds as the guys on the beach, and it's never those guys. Your pilots might be older, but for sure your infantry is going to be like boys, basically. So I appreciate that Nolan did that.
Boys will be boys.
Boys will be boys.
And you know what? Mark Rylance once again confirms that he is one of the more comforting presences to have on screen.
I just trust him.
Yeah. Yeah, like he says something and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's go to Dunkirk, Mark.
Yeah, at one point he nods approvingly at his son, and I felt his approval too. So
it actually cured a lot of wounds in my heart.
Yeah. Speaking of... I'll use that to transition to my next movie, because I'm hogging this microphone today. I'm sorry.
Hey, man, take it,
I guess it's my episode, technically. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'll get going.
Yeah, no. Speaking of wounding my heart, I watched Coco.
Oh, yes.
Have you seen it?
I don't know why I said it like that. No, I haven't.
It is honestly probably my favorite animated film I've seen in a while.
I really should see it, because I waited so long to watch Moana, and now I listen to the Moana soundtrack almost every day.
Yeah, this one, man, it was good. It's like it's kind of a coming of age story too.
Yeah. Doesn't it deal with like death?
Yeah, it does. So it's set in like an unnamed Mexican village, but the family, obviously, therefore they're Latino. And their last name is Rivera, so that kind of hit home. But it's kind of about a kid finding his way in a family that he doesn't fully fit in with, and him learning how to be himself, as well as learning how to appreciate family while in the like the afterlife. But he's not actually dead; he just gets cursed and stuck there. So it's super good. A lot of good voice talents in there. Catchy songs, a lot of good moments. Just for the listeners who don't know, one of my grandmothers is very old and the other just passed away. And the other grandmother kind of just doesn't talk anymore. And that very much plays into the plot line of this movie. And so at the end of it, I just kind of ugly cried for about 20 minutes on the airplane. I was glad all the lights were off.
I mean, they have a way of having their movies hit a lot harder than surface level. I mean, your Toy Stories are pretty fun movies, but like Inside Out, WALL-E, Up, they all have that way of really having a good message that delivers. So, and everything I've heard about Coco makes it seem like it's probably the pinnacle of that, of taking a movie and having like that emotional resonance. I think there's definitely,
everyone should see it. That's just kind of my review. Everyone go see it. It's great. I've been wanting to see it for a while, but I missed it in theaters, and I was like, as soon as I saw it on the screen, so that's getting watched sometime this week. So
yeah,
but no, it's definitely it gets a Max stamp of approval on it.
Oh, the Max stamp. That's a nice stamping. So that was a lot of 2017 releases that you caught up on.
Yeah.
I have gotten to see some new 2018 releases while you were out globetrotting. Some of us had to stay home here and keep up with the new releases.
Hold down the fort.
So I saw pretty much every big release of the past couple weeks here. I saw Ready Player One.
Nice. How was it?
It was fine. I went in with no expectations, as I'm sure anyone who's listened to the podcast over the past 3 months can attest to. You and I were not all that interested in it, but I saw it honestly mostly out of curiosity, and since I have a movie pass, why not?
Yeah.
It's a very good popcorn flick. Interesting spectacle. I had some major problems with the writing in particular. There's a lot of plot conveniences, and I honestly thought the dialogue was very, very bad. But the action spectacle, Spielberg knows how to do that, and the references weren't all that big of a deal. I thought they'd be using them to have people relate to the story in a cheap way. They basically were entirely background, except with a few exceptions. So it didn't really detract from the movie that much. And most of the time when they were doing a reference as a main part of the story, they treat it with a lot of respect, and it's mostly pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
So as far as the action spectacle and stuff goes, it's no Bahubali, but it's better than the Hobbit movies. So that's kind of your in between there.
That's a fair assessment, I would say.
Yeah. You'll toss the popcorn in your mouth. You might jump a little out of your seat. There might be one or two audible woes coming out of you, but it's not changing cinema. I can say that.
Yeah.
I feel like they set up a sequel. I don't know. I don't think the book has a sequel. They just kind of set themselves up. Probably if Spielberg ever wanted to do it again, he could. Which kind of sucks.
Everyone's joking that the sequel will just be references to the first movie.
Yeah, it could be at this rate. It was interesting enough. I talked to some people who I know really like the book, and they were pretty happy with it, so that's great.
That's for them, good. We could stop getting hate mail from them now for being mildly kind of not interested, but interested enough to go see it.
I'm still not that interested in it. I doubt I'll ever watch it again. I have no intention to read the book.
Yeah.
But there's one sequence right in the middle of the film that it's a 10 or 15 minute sequence that was top notch.
Nice.
So you probably shouldn't. Maybe if you watch it, of course. But if you only watch one sequence, on scenes on YouTube when it comes out, watch the middle sequence. You'll know what I'm talking about. You'll know.
You'll know.
I also saw a couple better movies. I'll rank up like you. Well, I'll save the best for last. The next 2018 release I saw was A Quiet Night, the Jim from The Office directorial debut.
Is it A Quiet Place?
A Quiet Place, yeah, not A Quiet Night. I'm sorry, I wrote down A Quiet Night, and I think I've said it a couple times. Most of the movie does take place at night, for the record.
Gotcha.
So let me just make this change in my notes. Bop, 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 bop. I saw A Quiet Place, directed by Jim from The Office.
I thought we were only calling him John Krasinski on this show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Team Krasinski, but
I got accosted when I called him Jim from The Office.
Yeah, I'm trying to make this more relatable for you, Max.
Okay, that works.
Directed by John Krasinski. It's really good. It's a horror movie, so that sucks, but it's not like a it's not like a cheap horror movie. It doesn't. Yeah. There are the occasional jump scare, but it's not like there's not much gross out action in it. Like, I think it might have even been just rated PG-13. There's not like an overwhelming amount of gore or anything like that. So I'm just thinking back. I'm pretty sure it could have landed that PG-13. But no, it's like a tight family story. It's kind of like Signs, where there's like things going on and you don't know, and they're very restrictive in showing the creature or not creature or whatever it may be. And then it's really focused on this family. But Signs, I'm on record on how much I love Signs. This is not as good as Signs. Gotcha. But it's fine. It's very satisfying. The ending. Yeah. It's funny, like, Emily Blunt is a very attractive woman, and they did everything they could to make her unattractive in this, and she was still attractive.
I was going to say, challenge accepted.
They were like, okay, so 480 days of no talking, like living this country lifestyle, very dirty, 9 months pregnant. Like, we're going to do everything we can to make her as unappealing as possible, but she's still very attractive. So the whole idea of like having a baby in this world is like pretty shitty. So
it's real life
that
too.
Was something past. Yeah, I mean, it is, but especially when like making a noise is basically like detonating a bomb.
Gotcha.
Like you die within seconds.
Yeah, but that sounds pretty stressful.
Yeah, and then having a baby didn't help, but it was good. I'll leave it at that, just because it's a pretty new release. People are probably still checking it out. But it was fine. I think you'd like it. I think you'd enjoy it.
I think so too.
I liked the set design a lot. That was my favorite part. The set was very detailed, and they moved around this large like farm area basically a lot, and so you got a really good layout of like the physical space of it, and they did some good camera movement so you could see the large space they were in. I really liked that. So
nice. I really like that.
Yeah. But the favorite movie I've seen while you were on your European vacation was Isle of Dogs, the new Wes Anderson flick. Stop motion animation.
Yeah. That was it's about an island full of dogs, right?
Yes, it's about a trash island in Japan being filled with dogs. I'm not going to give any plot details here because it's a really fun movie, and it hasn't even had its wide release yet at the time of the posting of this episode. So it's very good. If you like Wes Anderson, you'll like it. I really like a lot of what he did with the animation. Yeah. It's more than just stop motion. Like, there's a little bit of cartoon points in it.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, it's very detailed. It's very fun. I just really enjoyed it. It'll make you hug your dog. You don't gotta. You didn't gotta force my hand on that. Yeah. I know you weren't hugging your dog, but now you will. Yeah. No, it's just a really fun. It's a good movie. There's a pug in it, so I was very happy. Tilda Swinton plays a pug named the Oracle, and it's very satisfying.
Well, that should just be the poster right there.
What's funny is, like, of all the actors and actors, like, if you looked at the whole voice cast, which is like a who's who of A-list stars, the one person who looks least like a pug is Tilda Swinton, and she voices a pug. That's funny. And the pug can see the future because the pug can understand the TV, and it's really funny.
That's extra funny because your pug can understand the TV.
A little bit, yeah. My pug Mickey would hate this movie because there were dogs in it, and he wants to play with those dogs, and it's not fair. Yeah, that's life's not fair sometimes, Mickey. Yeah, Mickey. No, you're good, buddy. You can stay asleep. But yeah, I've watched some other stuff, but those are the big uns. Gotcha. You know what? I got one more. Have you seen Aaron Brockovich? No. It's really fucking good, man.
I mean, it was pretty well received at the time, so I believe you.
Yeah, but I never saw it, and I was looking for something to watch. Like, I think I was folding laundry, so I was like, I'll throw this on. And I just watched it start to finish, and it was...
Nice.
It's just really good.
Who directed that?
Steven Soderbergh.
Makes sense, yeah.
I've never been a big Julia Roberts fan, and I've never even been that big of a Steven Soderbergh fan, but it's awesome. What an awesome movie.
It's good to hear, man.
I believe it's on HBO now. I think that's where it was streaming. So
okay.
But Blade Runner.
Yeah, we had a lot to catch up on there, guys. Sorry about that. Sometimes you get with your friends, you just start talking.
Yeah, I'm not sorry.
You just start film geeking.
You just geek out,
Yeah.
Geeks out for Harambe. Well, Max, this is your 90% selection, so why don't you hit us with the plot synopsis of Blade Runner, and then a synopsis of why you chose Blade Runner. Boom. How about that?
Okay. Blade Runner. A Blade Runner must hunt down and terminate 4 replicants who stole a ship in space and have returned to Earth to find their creator.
Mm-hmm. They use the name in the definition there, just use the word in the definition.
It's weird because you can't define it without telling what the plot is. So that's why you have to do that. I tried to rewrite that as many different ways as I could. And I was just like, that's the simplest way.
Like you can't do it without it being pretty clunky. Like a man whose job is to hunt replicants.
Hunts replicants. Yeah, exactly. It's just, it does not work. So it's a bold choice, but there you have it.
Yeah. So why did you pick Blade Runner, my man?
Well, it's pretty simple why I picked it. It's one of the most influential science fiction films ever made. It is Ridley Scott, so it has a lot of talent behind it. It has a talented cast. We just saw the sequel this past year.
Yes,
but beyond just having a sequel, I mean, pretty much every dystopian cyberpunk movie takes all of its cues from Blade Runner. I mean,
for sure.
You can make an argument for a couple other films being pretty influential, and they definitely were, but anything you see after the release of Blade Runner is almost like it owes its whole aesthetic to Blade Runner. Yeah.
To Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And I mean the neon, like oversaturation, the haziness, the dirtiness of things, like it all started with Blade Runner.
Yeah. And it's just, I mean, you can even think like the music by Vangelis, the soundtrack's pretty freaking epic, but that whole sound is now associated with like this kind of science fiction movie.
For sure.
The movie itself didn't even do that well in theaters, but it became like a cult hit. And like
it's had a lot of life since then.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember I probably first saw this movie like in middle school and had no idea what I was watching. It was just like, this is mind blowing. I don't get it. And then I waited a couple years and revisited it, and I was like, I love this movie. This is amazing.
Sure.
But even then, I don't even know which cut I was watching at those time periods. But yeah, so it's just, it's a movie that's like, you have to watch it to kind of fully get it, but it's not even that complex of a film the more I see it. It's just kind of...
Yeah.
It's a pretty simple like detective story, but it's just the whole presentation that comes together. I don't know, man. It's just, I could see why people watch it and get captivated and we're like, I want to create science fiction, or I want to watch this kind of stuff and read this kind of stuff. Like, I get it. So
for sure.
That's what it did to me.
It is like a simple story that's put in a very complex world, I think. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite things about Blade Runner is they treat the audience with respect and they don't handhold that much. And maybe that's just the final cut. Maybe the original cut had more spelling out of things. Like, I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
But they mention things and there's no overhanded explanation, but you get it if you need to get it. And if you don't need to get it, it can kind of fall into the background. It walks that line pretty well.
I mean, for example, they mention the off-world colonies a lot in this film. They never show them. They don't tell you what the colonies are other than that the replicants work there. And
Yeah, there's an implication of like it being nicer too, because at one point they're talking to one of the like more downtrodden characters, and they're like, "Oh, so is that why you're still here on Earth?"
Yeah.
You know, so but they don't ever spell it out, so you kind of get to in your head fill out the details. You know,
it's the original Star Wars: New Hope when they mentioned the Clone Wars. There's no further definition of what that is.
For sure.
Like Luke knew what it was, Obi-Wan knew what it was, and this it's the same thing, which is like the antithesis of what you hate, which is the over exposition. This handles it so well when it does stuff like that.
I mean, it would be like if we're like, oh yeah, it was like that back in World War II, you know, when the Nazis took over Europe and we had to go over, like it'd be someone explaining something that way.
Yeah, and you're like,
which it felt unnatural just saying that to you right now. And that's just not how people talk. So
that could be a pretty good bit, though.
That would be a good bit, yeah. Real life exposition. But no, I mean, the fact that people in movies talk that way, I get it to an extent in other films where it's kind of key to understanding parts of the plot. But here, I mean, I think part of it is that core story is so simple.
Yeah, exactly.
It really is just, there's these replicants, find them. And then he goes through the world and you kind of pick up details throughout, but...
And jumping off that, what's cool is the implications of the world create the complexity in the film, not the story itself, because the implications that, you know, he ends up kind of having this relationship with a replicant himself. The replicants are basically slaves. I mean, they are slaves, and they're basically human too. So, I mean, there's just all these like interesting things that come out of it that it's not necessarily the story itself, because the story is him hunting them down.
Yeah.
But it has all these like cool things that get like wrapped into it. So
yeah, the story is like a vehicle for all these other ideas and discussions. Like you said, the replicants, they're pretty much as close to human as possible, but they're not human. So then there's all this idea about what rights that they have, and the main character, Harrison Ford's character, Deckard, he really doesn't like replicants at all.
Yeah.
And he treats them pretty disrespectfully throughout. But you kind of see the human side of them at almost every turn.
Oh, yeah.
You see their fear, you see their pain, you see their, their will to live. And it's a very interesting concept, especially like look at Star Wars, a great movie series. The droids and stuff there, they don't approach anything like the Blade Runner universe.
No.
They're never trying to be on that same axis.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed this viewing is what you literally just said. Deckard's almost inhuman.
Yeah.
They are wildly more human than he is, even with their kind of like amoral approach to trying to survive, which in itself is human.
Yeah.
Like everything they do is much less mechanical than anything he does. Dude's basically a cyborg himself, like walking around doing stuff just because he has to, you know, like he lives as a human machine, which there was that question for years of whether or not he was one, because I don't know if they mention it in the book only, or if they mention it in this, that like empathy is a big part of it. And his lack of empathy makes him just as machine as they are.
Yeah, and, I was reading that that's mostly a novel, part of the novel, which the novel is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick.
Yep.
This is not our first Philip K. Dick. Maybe it. We've talked about Philip K. Dick before on the podcast, I know.
Yeah, I talk about him like probably way too much.
Yeah. A lot of his stuff's getting adapted nowadays.
Yeah.
So like there's that whole series on Amazon isn't it just called like Electric Sheep or something?
Yeah. And we talked about one a couple weeks ago, the rotoscoped one.
Oh, yeah. Scanner Darkly.
Yeah, Scanner Darkly. So, I mean...
Anyways,
if you guys ever want to read some cool stuff, read some Philip K. Dick, because he's a really good writer. You could tell dude was like down with doing some drugs and just expanding his mind, but it worked really well for his fiction, and he explores a lot of like ideas with police and government and the human condition when it's placed in these like very restrictive organized systems. So he's definitely like an interesting read, man.
Yeah, I mean, other things that he did were like Minority Report, Total Recall. I believe his novel is the basis of the Amazon series The Man in the High Castle.
Yep.
So he's got a backlog of stuff, and he actually passed away just before Blade Runner came out. Blade Runner came out in June of 1982. He passed away in March of 1982.
Yeah, that's very close.
So, and Blade Runner was probably, if not the first, and one of the first things of his that became, a major release. And then probably Total Recall after that. And but you hear a lot about posthumous honors and stuff, and just look at the career his work has had after he has passed.
Yeah.
And Blade Runner is a big reason for that.
And just looking at the one you mentioned, Minority Report, it takes so much visual cues from this movie.
No doubt.
And what's funny is the first draft of the Minority Report screenplay was written as a sequel to Total Recall, which is also based on Philip K. Dick's work. I believe that one was called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. And the looks between those two are not that similar. I think the looks between Minority Report and Blade Runner are a lot stronger.
The worlds that they build are very different, but the concepts at their core are very. They would fit in the same world for sure.
Exactly, and that could be just the source material, but the visual cues they took were very adaptable, like you said. So
I think Blade Runner is also interesting because you mentioned the cult following. Last year, one of the best movies to come out last year was Blade Runner 2049. And there was a 35 year time gap between the two. And that's pretty insane. I mean, how often do we see the epic fail when a movie waits like 10 years for its sequel? Looking at you, Zoolander.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
So then Blade Runner 2049 comes out, and Ridley Scott's not directing. He's producing. I'm not sure what his level of involvement was, but they got Denis Villeneuve to direct, and he made a movie that is so Blade Runner that, I mean, it's probably as good a sequel as you can make to Blade Runner. Yeah. It honors the original. It makes its own story. It keeps all of the things that made Blade Runner good in its own movie. But then really, it updates the visuals, which help the world and stuff. It's really good.
There's even some things I like better about it, honestly. That might be sacrilege to say, but
in 2049,
yeah, it's not just some.
I like 2049 better on the whole, personally.
Okay, because there's some film choices that are done in that I just think is better filmmaking overall. Ridley Scott, I enjoy, but I mean, sometimes he doesn't hit the mark. That's how I feel, but no, like with this one, it is hard to have a main character who is very mechanical and hard to follow and sometimes just unsympathetic, where I like him because it's a Harrison Ford, but I mean, you could replace this with anybody at times and it would still be the same character. So it's kind of like, okay, that's kind of,
Yeah, Rick Deckard isn't much of a kid. There's not a lot of nuance to him, I don't feel like. Yeah. Though what's interesting is he's in 24. We're going to spoil 2049. Yeah,
just assume from here out.
He's in 2049 for less than half of that movie, and he has way more character there than he does here.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of that is because of the time that passed, probably in
the experiences he faced. Life. Yeah. And maybe that's even why I enjoy that aspect more, is because that character kind of gets a newer, like an updated persona that works a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the character, like Jared Leto's character who runs the Tyrell Corp in 2049, he's a lot more interesting than the Tyrell that runs the one here, who is a fine character, but it almost felt very rote, like the genius running the company gets killed by his own creation. Yeah. Jared he's like kind of sociopathic and strange and mysterious in 2049. It makes it a lot more interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Also, side note, Jared Leto's character is blind. I thought it was interesting that Tyrell goes out by getting his eyes poked out.
Yeah, when I rewatching this, I was like, that's kind of a cool nod.
Yeah.
That had to be intentional.
Oh yeah. 100% on that. Even without looking it up.
The other thing I really love about 2049 compared to Blade Runner is they explore more of the world in 2049. Blade Runner is in the city. I'm not even sure if they specify specifically which city they're in. If they do, I don't remember in Blade Runner, but
it's probably the very beginning if they do it.
Yeah. It's all within the city there, whereas in 2049 they leave the city for a bit of the film, and it kind of suits that world building even more. And 2049 does also have a much more ambitious story, while maintaining that the lack of exposition of the world. Like, they mention things in 2049 just in background, just like the Clone Wars is like a good example, where you're like, okay, I want to know what happened there, but they never go into it. And but the story that they do within the 2049 world is more ambitious than the one that they do here. Like, it's more grand sci-fi. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. And the thing is, I mentioned earlier that, you know, there's a lot of subtleties in this film that I enjoy in the first Blade Runner, but it leaves this big question of, you know, humans are obviously complicit in this like second form of slavery here.
Yeah.
But it never says anything about it. 2049 at least tries to say something about that. And I even think like they could have gone a little further with it, because they had that really interesting subplot with Mackenzie Davis's character and like a revolution kind of forming.
Yeah.
And that kind of trails off where your characters who are experiencing that leave that scenario, so you don't find out more about it. But it's cool to see like that aspect built out, to see, you know, that the world is changing actively. It's still like existing and still running. It's not just people kind of statically dealing with it.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're definitely right. And that's, I don't know. I mean, we saw a Blade Runner sequel 35 years later, so yeah. I'm not going to say we're not going to see another Blade Runner, but the second one had a massive budget and it didn't do too well at the box office. I think it's going to have a long life, just like the original Blade Runner had, just as a favorite movie of sci-fi fans.
Yeah, but I could see that.
If they were to dip back into the Blade Runner well, it wouldn't surprise me if they went into that Mackenzie Davis revolution subplot.
Yeah, I think they would definitely need to. Because it was,
or maybe they'll do something totally isolated again. And, well, I guess Blade Runner 2049 wasn't totally isolated from the original, but a mostly isolated story, and you'll just hear about whatever happened with that revolution in the background, and you'll be like, "What's going on? I want to know."
Help.
Yeah.
Kind of jumping back to something we said earlier, this time watching it, I was way compelled by all the replicant stories. And like I said, I was kind of just not over Harrison Ford's character, but just less engaged in it this time watching it. Just like, okay, let's get to these replicants again, because they're super interesting. And like everything Rutger Hauer does in this movie is amazing. Yeah,
all the replicants kind of gave me the creeps, and I think that was at least a little bit intentional, except for Rutger Hauer. I really liked him. Yeah. He's easily the most human character in the whole movie. Like, even Tyrell, I don't remember his first name. The Tyrell's first name was like Emmett or something.
Mr.
Either way, yeah, Eldon Tyrell. He was pretty human, but he was still cold and calculated, whereas like Rutger Hauer's Roy Batty, he's the replicant, but he's also the most human in that he's emotional and he has this will to live, which is like one of the most human traits about humans, I guess, is like that push for survival and stuff. And it makes him the best character in my opinion.
It's almost like a wolf at times too. He's like super predatory, but like, I don't know, there's some kind of appeal to him because of that.
Yeah.
He just kind of like,
he's a weirdo too. I really like that. Like when he busts his head through that bathroom wall.
Yeah.
Like, that was really funny. And then like for like a split second they linger as he's trying to pull his head out and he looks like he can't get it out, and it would have been really funny if that was his character's end, where like he made a dramatic entrance by busting his head through a bathroom wall and then got stuck.
He just did it for the vine.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, dude, he's awesome in this movie, and apparently he considers this his finest work. So he's like super proud of it, which makes sense.
What are the other big works of his career?
I mean, he's had a bunch, man.
Yeah, I mean, he has a long filmography, but I feel like, I don't know Rutger Hauer from any other starring roles.
That's fair.
But I'm probably just forget. He looks like he could be like an Anthony Hopkins type. You know?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely that kind of.
Like if Anthony Hopkins wasn't available for Westworld, they could have gotten Rutger Hauer.
Yeah, he's the first thing you'd probably recall off the top of your head. I mean, it's not a starring role by any means, but he's in Batman Begins. He's the other business guy who runs Wayne Enterprises. He's like, didn't you get the memo? He's that guy. So
I haven't seen Batman Begins in so long, but yeah. I'm sure next time I watch it, I'm sure like, oh,
he's
yeah,
Morgan Freeman's antagonist in that movie.
Oh, he's like running it before they put Morgan Freeman in charge.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I mean, he's been in so many things that it's not even worth listing. But
he'll always be Roy Batty in my heart.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think he feels the same way. When he was first hired for the role, Ridley Scott knew him from a bunch of theater productions. And apparently he wanted to mess with Ridley Scott because he just knew him as this like very serious actor. So he showed up wearing like green satin pants or like pink satin pants with like a white sweater and a green like frog on it with big green sunglasses, just dressed very eccentric, and showed up to set like that just to mess with Ridley Scott.
Didn't Ridley Scott choose him like kind of sight unseen, like just having heard of him?
Yeah. So he had no idea what to expect.
That must be kind of nice, you know, because then you could kind of come in and make your own reputation again, you know? Like if I got hired for a job and they'd never seen me before, I might dye my hair. Yeah.
You might roll in smoking that cigarette.
Yeah. I could finally become the cool cigarette guy. All I need is a new job where they've never met me. So if anyone's hiring, I'm looking to make that move. Yeah.
If you want to hire someone you've never met, contact Scott at the Critical Breakdown.
Yeah. I'll definitely pick up. We also have Daryl Hannah here. I thought that was interesting. That's a big name.
Yeah. This is when she was kind of a nobody.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
But it's definitely, I don't know if you'd say it's an iconic role, but it's one of those that sticks out, you know?
So her character gave me the creeps here. I think I know what it is. I can't think of a character who always wears face paint that I really like from anything. It just makes me uncomfortable. Maybe there's something like in my youth that happened with face paint.
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't think it's even that weird of a thing to be freaked out by.
Okay.
Like that's fine. I don't think anyone's going to really judge you for that. Like juggalos are kind of creepy.
Yeah, for sure. Clowns aren't known for being not creepy. Her death scene, like I have a lot of trouble watching when she's like spazzing out.
Yeah, it's a little tough.
Yeah, but no, I mean she's fine here. One of my favorite characters on this watch was J.F. Sebastian, William Sanderson.
Yeah, he's 25.
He's very innocent. He did not look like he was 25.
No, he has a disease where he ages fast. So that was the whole thing there.
Yeah. And the actor was like 38.
Yeah.
When Sanderson when the movie came out. So, but no, I like his character. I mean, he's a pretty minor character in the grand scheme. He's like very innocent. And,
but he's one of the more human seeming characters. I think that's why he's easy to like, you know, because you just, it's going to go bad for him, but you're hoping still that he makes it through.
Yeah. Do you actually ever see what happens to him?
No, they just mention
the implication is there. Yeah,
they mention it. Like, I think when they contact Deckard again, when he dies at Tyrell's office. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean they.
So they say they have two dead here, and the other guy's address is this, and it's J.F. Sebastian's address.
Yeah, so. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That end chase scene too is really good, like through J.F. Sebastian's weird toy shop home. It's just a really good, like the way the city works with the neon lights and the like spotlights shining through all the windows create really interesting sets, and they do a good job of using it well, like the lighting.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that's really good about Blade Runner. Like when you watch Star Wars, I don't think you ever think like Luke had a chance of dying, but Deckard could have died easily in this movie.
Yeah.
He felt expendable throughout, you know, and in basically every conflict he gets like choke slammed or something. So like they make that end chase the stakes were high because I felt very easily like he could have died.
Yeah, and
he's very scared, which helps. That's probably the best part of Harrison Ford's acting job here.
Yeah,
the way he's running away from Roy Batty he is very afraid.
Well, and that is one thing worth mentioning. The more he comes in contact with these replicants, the more human he becomes overall. Which is interesting because he's not empathetic towards them at first at all, and then with what's her name? Rachel. With Rachel, he kind of opens up some, but even then, his romantic interactions with her is very weird.
Yeah, that's the biggest criticism I've heard of this film. There's like a pretty rapey scene when they're together, where she's trying to leave, and he just like stops her from leaving the door and like picks her up and pulls her away from the door and stuff. And I mean, I get it. And then, I get the criticism, but then at the same time, it brings that whole how human are these replicants question back into your mind a little bit. Yeah. But it's almost uncomfortable to think about. So
yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's not to excuse it because we should acknowledge that that's, it's weird, but it is 1982. And if you watch a lot of movies from that era, this is a lot more common than it is. It's just that this movie has stayed, present, it stayed around. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely we should kind of wonder about that. And then, I mean, even 2049 caught some flack for how it treated female characters because they were pretty sidecar to the main motorcycle there. But
yeah, I can get that.
So I think for sure, almost jumping off what you said, if you want to dip back into this universe, really focusing on some of the female characters might be pretty interesting with Mackenzie Davis's possible revolution there.
Yeah, and you could have Ana de Armas's character back in. She's an AI. She's even less human than the replicants, but she's also very human.
And that's that's definitely the progression this series should make, is exploring more and more about what it means to be human, which they do, and they do a pretty good job,
for sure.
I think by the end of it, when you see Roy Batty in that fight and he decides with his, his last few breaths, what he's going to do is save this man who's sent to kill him and who's killed all of his friends. Like, that's such a human thing to do because almost by doing that, he ensures that his memory survives, and I don't know, this is drawing from another source real quick, but I heard this really interesting, I forgot what it was. It was a story or a documentary where it talks about death and how death is like the thing that kind of makes us human in a sense because we understand what death is. So when you think of all the huge achievements in the world, so many of them started from the fear of death and trying to figure out a way to become immortal by preserving your memory. So like, burial sites existed to keep the memory alive of people. And then stuff like pyramids, you would build the biggest pyramid because you wanted to preserve your legacy, basically. Yeah. So, I mean, almost by saving this guy who's trying to kill him, he ensures that even though he's about to die, just like physically, no matter what, that this little tiny piece of him, a memory of him exists. And it's just kind of super interesting. But then to see that kind of get stitched onto Deckard at the very end there is almost like Deckard becomes a human himself, even though he already is. But
it definitely is like a humanizing moment, though, I mean, facing his own death like that. And then especially with the way he treats replicants to be saved by one. And then that whole speech that Rutger Hauer makes there is really cool.
It's like the coolest speech ever.
Yeah, honestly, it pretty much is the coolest speech ever. He mentions more of these things like the Tannhauser Gate and the shoulder of Orion. Yeah. And it's just like it's so much world building. And then he also as he's hanging over Deckard, he says, one of my favorite line, I think he says, "Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it is to be a slave." Yeah. And it just kind of hits home the thesis of the movie about how human are these replicants and how human are we with the way we treat things. Yeah. No, it's really good. Blade Runner is a good movie.
Yeah, dude. It really
How
is.
about it? How about that?
We're making some hot takes today, man.
Yeah.
Blade Runner.
Like, I don't want to be bold, but Blade Runner's really bringing it for me.
Yeah. The only thing I think that kind of caught me off guard was when he goes back to Rachel, and he's just like he wakes her up, but he, you know, if it's your first time seeing the movie, he's still armed, and you're wondering, like, is he going to take her out? Because he had just talked to Edward James Olmos's character about it for like a brief second, and he says that famous line, "It's too bad she won't live, but then again, who does?" Which is like the second coolest line in this movie after the one we just heard. But yeah, so you have this question, like, is he done with it? Because he should be done with it. We know that, and of course he is. But then he asks her, he's like, "Do you love me? Do you trust me?" And I'm like, y'all have just like done it once. I think you're jumping really far ahead there, buddy. I mean, she's just yeah. So that's where it confused me. I was just like, that doesn't really work for me this time around.
When you know, you know.
Yeah, I guess so. And for her, I guess it kind of makes more sense because her whole world has just been destroyed. And, you know, she's trying to piece things together. So he's like the one who told her the truth. So she probably has some kind of affection there.
Yeah, more trust there.
Yeah.
Also, the replicant lifespan is artificially I don't remember what the total was. Like, it wasn't like 4 years, was it?
It's something like that, like 4 to 6 years in that range. Yeah.
But you know, you can make a hastier decision when you only got 4 years to live.
That's true. That's true.
So you know what? When you can give Deckard another shot. You're more trusting when you only have 4 years to live because you don't have as much to lose.
I mean, you're right. I got to give it to you.
Like, when you're right, you're right. You know?
Yeah.
One thing that I really like, Blade Runner's Final Cut has its own Rotten Tomatoes page. Mm-hmm. It's also at 90%. So both the actual original and the Final Cut are both rated 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. So that's cool.
Look at that. We didn't even break any rules.
Well, yeah. We didn't break any rules.
We followed what we said we would.
Did you know that this is in theaters the same time as E.T.? For some reason, I never really...
Yeah, I mean, I knew that, but it's
kind of a natural transition to talking box office numbers, you know?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do that.
Oh, cool. Sure. Well, it had a $28 million budget, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. What they do with, like, practical effects and stuff.
Yeah, dude. For $28 million. Some of the best miniature work, like, you'll ever see is in this movie.
No doubt. And I mean, I think the 2049 had a $250 million budget, so... but I think the budget there even was well used. But
yeah,
the total domestic run for Blade Runner was only 32.9 million, and it opened at number 2 on June 25th of 1982, behind the third week of E.T., and it opened at 6.2 million. So that's fine, you know. But it's too bad I couldn't find any foreign numbers. When a lot of movies like this don't have any like worldwide, like non-domestic numbers on their box office mojo page or their Wikipedia. So I always wonder, like, I actually don't know if this would have had an international release. I have no idea what cinema was like back then.
Yeah.
So
I don't have an answer for you, but
yeah, I wasn't expecting one, so it's okay.
Okay, good.
I just thought it was an interesting point, you know. So maybe it made a little more money if there was a worldwide gross that is just like under question or like don't have an exact number or something like that. But
yeah, I mean, you got to assume through subsequent DVD and Blu-ray and VHS releases that it made plenty of money.
Yeah, a movie like this has had about as long a life on VOD and Blu-ray and DVD and stuff. Like The Big Lebowski would be the same way, where it didn't have the highest theater run, but it's remained so popular and like highly recommended by genre fans that it definitely has been a profitable franchise. Yeah,
for sure.
2049 though didn't. I don't know if it made more money than its budget. And the budget is generally lower than the actual spend because it generally doesn't include the marketing or distribution and such. Yeah. But you know, it's really good though. So it's a good companion piece to Blade Runner.
Definitely.
You know, I wish I watched it again before we recorded this. And honestly, I did have time. I just I stumbled a bit. This is not an excuse.
If I had like another 3 hours, I could have finished it on the plane. I was very close.
Did you start 2049 again?
I watched the first 10 minutes of it, and I was like, I actually want to watch this, and I only have an hour left on my plane, so I'm just not going to do it right now.
Plane doesn't seem like the best environment to watch Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, well, the girl sitting next to me, aka Jody, was watching some weird ones, so I was like,
what was Jody watching on the flight?
She watched and did not enjoy Shape of Water.
Okay.
And then she watched The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Yeah.
And man, I have not seen that movie, but I've seen it in mute now, and it is weird.
That's everything I've heard about it. I think it's coming to Amazon streaming soon, so I'm excited to watch it. What did she think of it?
She liked that one. She said it was weird, but she liked it. But yeah.
So that's kind of funny that you didn't. So you still haven't seen Shape of Water, right?
No, I was going to try and get to it, but
it's so much.
I didn't want to be sleepy when I watched it, so when I get sleepy, I'd watch something else that I had seen. Fair. So
I'm sure that one's high on your list, so just because I know you love Guillermo.
Yeah, and from what I saw on her screen, I was like, I'll enjoy watching that. But I purposefully looked away from her screen during that movie.
Blinders up.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Next week we got The Fighter, and after that, though, we have our poll choices. So why don't we talk about those a little bit? Give our thoughts on those, because we're going to post this poll, and you clowns are all going to vote.
You'll have some time to get your vote in, enough time for us to watch the winner and then record about it. So we'll have that schedule go out soon.
Yep. So Max, what are your thoughts on Zombieland?
I remember enjoying Zombieland. It felt very of the time, like contemporary. Zombies had just begun their big resurgence where everyone was loving zombies at the time.
For sure.
You know, this was like right before Woody Harrelson kind of like just was, I guess he was jumping back into the picture like hardcore.
Yeah, this helped him get back into like A-list status again. And
then you have Emma Stone delivering just as good as she always is, and then you have
Jesse Eisenberg,
thank you.
Lex Luthor.
You know, playing a fine character. I don't remember him being like overly great, but he was good at being a, you know, kind of a geeky version of an everyman or something, just like a dude, you know. So I mean, I have positive thoughts on this movie, but I haven't thought about it much in forever.
Yeah, it is one that I like, same as you, I remember enjoying, and obviously it's got good reviews, but I really haven't thought about it since I watched it.
Yeah.
Like, I probably saw it in 2009 and haven't watched it again since then. So I would be curious as to how the comedy's aged. Like, it came out in 2010, 2009?
Yeah.
I can't remember, but a lot's changed since then. Like, it kind of feels silly to say, but the things that are in comedic movies these days are just different than they were then.
Yeah.
So whereas Zombieland, I remember being like fresh and not pulling punches and stuff like that. Now when we watch it again, we might not think that anymore. I don't know. Yeah. It'll be interesting if it wins. And it was pretty popular, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was the winner. What about An American Werewolf in London?
I liked this movie a lot. But at the same time, just reading more about what's his name, Landis, the guy who made it.
Max Landis' son, John Landis.
John Landis. He's kind of just a big douchebag.
Oh, really?
So that just is a detractor for me. But as a piece itself, I do enjoy it, and I think like a lot of film people like it. So I think it has a pretty good chance, man.
I've never seen it. So
I think you'd get some good out of it, man.
Okay, cool. I know frequent guest of the pod and soon to be guest again of the pod because our summer movie preview will be coming up. Kara is a big fan though of American Werewolf in London.
I mean, it's good. I just had to make a point that just doing research on Landis at one point, I was like, man, this guy's a jerk.
All right. So. Dr. Strongy, also known as Dr. Strange.
Yeah. The Strange Man himself. I haven't seen it, so
I like that Strange boy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Ant-Man in the sense that it's one of the more throwaway Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Because you it kind of is very self-contained, though. We have seen Doctor Strange in other stuff like Thor Ragnarok. He has kind of a cameo, and
yeah, that's when I remembered that he had a movie. Honestly, that sounds terrible, but it's true.
Well, I know you don't get out for every single Marvel movie.
No,
I also feel like Doctor Strange might have had a cameo in another Marvel thing, but I honestly just can't remember.
He may have had like an end scene in something.
Was he? Yeah.
I feel like I heard somebody saying
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I don't remember. I don't know.
I don't remember.
But this one, Doctor Strange is cool. It's very visually interesting, which I like, and the ending is sort of funny. It's not like Guardians of the Galaxy where it's supposed to be a funny movie, but it's funny in the way that all Marvel movies have like a certain threshold of funny. But the ending is like very weird in Doctor Strange. I wouldn't be surprised if this one won the popular vote with, not Age of Ultron, with Infinity War right on the horizon there. People might want us to dive in to
Maybe.
the doc.
I don't know anyone who's like crazy about this movie though, other than like your Benedict Cumberbatch fans. I know people who are just like, it was pretty good.
That is, in fairness, that is a very loud audience.
Yeah.
Benedict Cumberbatch fans.
Yeah.
Benedict Cumberbatch is voicing the Grinch in the upcoming Grinch cartoon movie. And the trailer was in front of Isle of Dogs when I saw it the other day. And I couldn't tell that it was Benedict Cumberbatch, which is interesting. He has such a discernible voice.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah. He has a good voice. I got to give him that.
He's got a real killer. He's got some chords for sure. Yeah,
those pipes, man.
Pipes are calling. The final poll choice for you all to vote on is Galaxy Quest. Probably my favorite movie. I haven't seen American Werewolf in London, but my favorite of the four here. And I have not watched Galaxy Quest in a pretty long time, so I would love to watch it again. Yeah,
I would say Galaxy Quest is the one I watched the most on this list. Probably my favorite of these four for sure. One I haven't seen.
It's such a fun movie.
Yeah, it's the perfect Star Trek like parody film.
Yeah.
So much that it's better than at least half of the Star Trek films out there.
Yeah, I have not ever watched Star Trek other than the movies with Chris Pine. Mm-hmm. So I'm not even really looking at it from that perspective, the parody of Star Trek. It's just a very funny movie.
Yeah, exactly.
But even still, I do get a lot of the jokes they make. I mean, it's not like
the references are cultural by this point. So
yeah. And I mean, it's like peak Tim Allen, and Alan Rickman's amazing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They had announced that they were working on a
TV show.
Yeah. Is that still happening, you think?
As far as I know, because it's on Amazon. It
if
is.
I remember correctly, there was like a pretty big actor.
It's Paul Scheer.
Paul Scheer, that's who it was. He's
the head writer, the showrunner. So
yeah, that'll be interesting.
And from what I remember, his concept is two casts, like the original and the Next Generation, like doing something like that. So I don't know the details, obviously, because there's not more, but I think there's definitely room for it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if after Alan Rickman passed, if that was going to stop the series, but I also didn't know the concept. I thought that they might have been trying to get the original actors involved.
I'm sure originally, because it's been pitched a couple times before, but I'm sure originally they wanted to, but then, I mean, I can't see Alan Rickman being like, I'll do a long-term TV show anyway.
Yeah. So, like Amazon series, like I'm in.
Yeah. Like a couple episodes I could see maybe.
Cameo maybe, for sure. But hey, they say TV is the new movie.
That's true. It's a paycheck.
But yeah, those are the four choices. That'll be fun,
Yeah, you guys just make sure you check out our social feeds on our website where we will have the polls up.
Yeah.
And you guys get your votes in.
Yeah.
If you had to watch one right now, Scott, would it be Galaxy Quest?
Yeah, it would be Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, same here. But you guys pick what you want.
Yeah. Like, don't listen to us.
Yeah, please.
Other than the rest of the episode.
Yeah, just listen to our podcast, but not us.
Yeah, yuck. Yeah. But I will vote, and I will vote for Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
I did reset my Twitter password so I could participate in these things.
Look at that.
I know. Do you have any more Blade Runner thoughts, Max?
No, not really. Don't try to watch it when you're like half asleep.
Yeah.
That's it. Because it is kind of a slower paced movie. So, you know, it requires you to pay attention and not to be tired. That's all.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, be awake when you watch it. That's a good tip.
This ain't no Netflix.
Ooh, yeah, no Netflix.
What about you, Scott? Any final thoughts on the final cut?
It's just a good movie. Every time I watch it, I find a little something more. So
something.
A little something. So I have no more thoughts. I think we've done a really good job of sharing our thoughts here, Max.
Nice. I like it
when
we share thoughts.
If people want more thoughts, where can the good people find us?
Well, you can find us thinking on thecriticalbreakdown.com, or you can find us on our Twitter at BreakdownCast.
Yeah.
We're on Facebook. We're on Instagrams. You know, we do things on there. We post things and make sure we update our social feeds. So check that out. You can find me making designer eyeballs in my cold storage room. Or you can find me on Twitter at Max Rivera Film.
You can find me eating noodles in a police chopper. Or you can find me at breakdown_Scott on Instagram or Twitter, you know, whatever you want. Yeah. Shoot us an email. Tell us that Max was right and Blade Runner is a really good choice on the 90% line. If you disagree, please keep that to yourself. We don't want to hear it. That email address is podcast@thecriticalbreakdown.com. Yeah, I guess I forgot to say that. It's essential, but it's okay. Wally's a podcast dog. And we're the podcast boys. And Jason Brown did our music and Joshua did our art. There you go. Mixing it up. It's the whole crew. Whole crew. Guardians of the Galaxy. Next week on The Critical Breakdown. Dukes up, Rivera. We're watching The Fighter. Also rated 90% on Rotten Tomatoes.